We're rolling, guys. Appreciate you jumping on here. I think this is my third week of Infield Talk. Brandon Szink with me again, and a new guy, Kyle Wrighte. Really looking forward to it. I think we got a good mix from pro to youth level, which is great. Brandon's got a little youth background too, and I got to give you guys some of the credit there. That's tough to deal with sometimes, and it presents its own little challenges, but also some really cool opportunities. And you guys, from time management to just being disciplined with it, I give you guys some props. So I'm looking forward to talking some infield with you guys tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about drills. Again, I think I mentioned to you guys earlier, this conversation could go on for hours and hours about all the different drills out there, and I'm not expecting us to cover every single one. I want to know from you guys some of your favorite drills and why you guys do it, and then some of your teachings behind those drills. So let's get started. The first one, I want to go over some glove work, right? I know we do the knee drills and, all the pick work and all of that. Kind of go into, if there's any little twist that you guys add to it, and then your teachings behind it. Szink, I'll let you start off.
Yeah, as I was taking my notes today for this, I was really – it's one of those things where you get so comfortable with doing it, and then when you finally have to write your ideas or your thoughts down, it starts to get a little bit wordy. So I'm going to try and keep it as concise as possible. When we talk about glove work, I like to isolate parts of the body. So if I can isolate the hands to start off, that typically means, just like you guys know, you get on your knees, you try and get in a good posture, your butt's back, your chest is over your kneecaps, you're working out in front of your body. Some of the cues that I like to use for young guys especially is if we're wearing a baseball cap, try and work out in front of the bill of your cap. If we're seeing a ball in, bring it into your belly button, let your eyes follow the ball the way in, tuck your chin. As we start to talk about, attacking hops and, whether that's one-handed or two-handed, most of your hops are probably going to be one-handed, but when we're doing the hops, forehand, backhand, tucking that chin into your shoulder on a forehand, and then just following the ball with your eyes all the way. I think that's a really good cue for young kids, because I think, especially when you're doing a partner drill, I think, and you see it at the high school level too, I think guys start to kind of get a little bit lax on those. When doing partner drills, I really like starting with a bare hand and then progressing to a training glove or a paddle. It's funny, I always tell guys that I've worked with in the past, when I was a high schooler, we always have to use the wood cutout paddles, and it was a real beast. So if you made a mistake, you're getting a finger pinched or something like that. And then moving on into your regular glove.
Szink, can I stop you right there?
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Can you go into why do you like the paddle glove?
One thing you and I talked about, Tyler, is talked about the other day, Tyler, is trying to stop the ball in a certain spot. And I think, we see it all the time with big leaguers when we watch big league video or really good advanced players. They kind of stop that ball out in front of them, and then they'll work. Obviously, they're going to pull that ball in, or it's going to visually look like they pull the ball in, but at the same time, they're moving their feet. So if we can stop that ball out in front of us and then either make that negative move into us, or if we're working through one hand, just get used to working on going forward and stopping that ball out in front of us. And then, it does, in some cases, if you have those really small training gloves, it does give you a smaller pocket too to work with. So it promotes your hand-eye coordination as well. And I think too, in some cases, some guys like to get real wristy with it. And I think if you teach guys that you have to keep your fingers down and your wrist bent, that's a good teacher. That's a good tool to teach them to do that. If you start to bend your wrist, if you start to bend your wrist this way, obviously the ball is not gonna not going to stop where you want it to. It's going to roll up on you. Different cases there.
Sure. Sorry to interrupt, but go on.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just gonna then move on to isolating isolating your upper half. So really, when I say that, I'm talking from your knees up. So we already isolated the hands. We talked about posture, eyes. Then we're going to isolate from the knees up. So we have our feet still. Really promote a good posture. Kind of working on that. Already got that right left move down, and you're working out in front of you. You got your butt down and flat back. All that stuff that we always talk about as coaches. You might have a natural sway with your knees if the ball goes left or right. I think that's kind of a good thing to feel, especially if you have to adjust in a game. The ball kind of takes a skip on you or a hop that you're not expecting. And then just, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to stop you just like Tyler, but you use the word posture, and I feel like that's a difficult word to describe to youth and high school players for infield, opposed to like, hey, you need good posture when you're eating at like the dinner table. I'm just curious as to what both of you guys kind of are your talking points for good posture when you're fielding ground balls.
Mm-hmm. I'll hit on that real quick. Just breaking down like the fielding position, right, is, knees slightly bent, back flat. When our chest is up, our hands can't get out in front of us, and it's really hard for our head to get low, right? So when our back's flat, our head's lower to the ground, plus it allows my hands to get out. So I talk about almost, getting your butt up in the air and chest down to the ground is kind of the posture that I talk about. Szink?
Yeah, no, same thing. I think if you're on the balls of your feet, or you feel the balls of your feet, I think it's kind of like hitting in some cases. If you can feel your feet on the ground, better base will come. And same idea as butt up, back flat. With young kids, obviously, we always try and find some sort of cue to use. So I always say if we can put a glass of water on your back, you're probably in a good posture. And then, like I said before, working that glove and your hands out in front of the bill of your cap.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I think for youth, the butt, literally keeping your butt up and your chest over your toes is something that's different, because they all kind of come and just squat straight down. And that's where I feel like that terminology has seemed to work well with a bunch of people I work with. And then once I've kind of gotten into high school level, it's kind of transformed into, you can tell them like, hey, do more like a deadlift or a hip hinge, more so than like a squat. So like, I think the terminology changes, but I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to see pretty much what you guys said. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's good.
No, you're good, man. This is how how it should be. And then not to take up too much more time on this, but after we isolate the knees up, or actually let me back up. When we isolate the knees up, I think there's different variations. And we can go partners, we can go coach rolling to you, we can go hack attack, we can go fungo. One thing I did want to touch on before we get too far into it, one thing I've been kind of playing with in my head, and different things that I've been looking at. As a coach, you obviously want to understand there's a progression, and then understand kind of the level that you're playing at. And this is a conversation I had with somebody a couple of days ago. It was, can we work at a speed greater than what we're used to? And I think, and this is just something that I may have made up, maybe I heard somewhere, I can't remember, but I think it's 10% higher than your average. So if you take your average, we'll just call it exit velocity in this case, your average exit velocity that you're seeing is 80 miles an hour off the bat, right? You want to take 10% of that, add it to what you're seeing, and then make that your kind of the highest point you're practicing at. It's kind of the same. I actually think it's a training. Like runners use it. I think what I've read in the past is if you're running 30 miles, right, and you 1 week, then the next week you should try and run 33 miles. You just take 10% of what you run. But anyway, I wanted to mention that as we talk about the hack attacks and the fungos and adding in different tools, because I think it's good to then get guys seeing a different speed. So when we are isolated and we see a different speed, again, they're going to let the natural sway of their body kind of take over and their hands take over, still keeping those feet isolated in that drill that I was just talking about. And then, obviously from a working by yourself standpoint, wall ball's awesome. I've seen different variations to where you're not moving. We used to do it in high school and college, to where you're not moving, you're moving, you're on your knees, different stuff like that I've already kind of touched on. But I'll let you go, Kyle. I didn't mean to ramble on there.
Kyle, before you go here, Szink, I just want to go back real quick.
Sure.
One thing I really liked that you said was, tuck your chin, 1Q. Something I even tell older guys, right, is you can't stare at the ball long enough, right? You've been playing this game, and even at the youth level, right, unless you're probably playing T-ball, they can tell you where first base is, right? If you close their eyes and they're on the field, they probably can point to where first base is. Your feet are going to take you where you need to go. But the hardest thing to do is catch the ball. So we have to make sure our eyes follow the ball as long as possible. And that's one cue I use too, is tuck your chin in, because it kind of keeps your eyes honest to follow the ball all the way in. One other thing you mentioned, isolating, just the hands and being on your knees. I really like the machine and fungos for those, almost rather than rolls. Just because it forces you to get your hands out. You can cheat a little bit on that, especially, the older guys. They'll cheat a little bit if you're just rolling it to them. But if you put the machine there or you're fungoing it, they have to get their hands out. So it really forces them to have good hands and forces the hands to be out. Kyle, I'll let you go on and, kind of go into what you do for glove work.
Yeah, let's see. I made this PowerPoint a little while back, and I just added to it. Let's see if I can share this.
Yep, we got it.
Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Let's see. Okay, we'll see if the video works too. It might be a little choppy. I was in like a Kai Zoom call the other day, and it was a little choppy, but it'll keep repeating. Either way. One of the biggest things that I've so exactly like Szink said, I start a lot with isolating the hands, and I go straight to the knees with almost everyone I start doing lessons with, and then everyone on my team. And then I think something that is a really easy addition to any team's quote-unquote short hops or just a player's routine is just adding variability in the hops. I think adding variability in all the drills that I do and anybody does really takes it to that next level of game. I've seen plenty of high school kids come in and train with me, and I'm like, hey, go through your short hops, whatever your short hops are, and they just do a quote unquote short hop in the same spot for 20 reps. And it's like, that's good, but in baseball, when do you know you're going to get that short hop every single time? So as you can see here, I think it's about to start over. I do a snake roll, so I roll the ball on the ground, and this 8-year-old funnels to his midline and then breaks to his tight V. Then I throw a short hop. He pushes, breaks to his midline, tight V, and I throw one where it's kind of a high bounce, and he turns his glove over and works on kind of just like an exchange. And this is it's like you kind of said, Szink, it's just isolating the hands, and we're doing small drills, but adding some sort of variability to it, I feel like kind of gives that legit neurological stimulus to where they have to think and their hands are working at the same time. So this is one of the basic things I do. And then normally I'll stand them up, and I'll start with their left foot up or left toe up. I don't have a video for this one. And I'll work them kind of like that rocker step into this right foot, left foot, 2-step footwork. So I kind of start going into those 2-step and 4-step patterns that I think Tuck Frawley kind of was one of the main guys that started to implement, at least using that verbiage, and I've kind of stole that from him. But I think building that framework of your hands working with your feet is something that a lot of players don't know. They don't have, when they go hit with a hitting coach, they're like, I have my rhythm, I have my load, I have my stride, my first move, my extension. They could go through it all with you from the time they're 8 years old, because they all have hitting lessons and they all hit off a tee. If you say, hey, what's your fielding progression? Like, I field the ball, I throw it, you know, so like, I feel like trying to build that, like, I like to use the same kind of terminology in terms of like, we funnel, we press or we push, we get to our midline, right foot, left foot, get to my tight V, shuffle, you know, all those type of things, kind of just to build that process that it's like, when you do make a mistake, where did that happen in there, you know? So this is one of the main videos for that.
Kyle, if you don't mind me interrupting here.
No, I don't.
I do a little lessons on the side too with some young guys, and I'll say, you know, that's probably one of the hardest things. You know, usually the first lessons, I'm like, all right, I kind of want to see what they got, so you just go out there and roll them some ground balls, and you know, their feet stop and their hands want to keep moving, right? There's really no flow. There's kind of a disconnect. I call it like disconnect, right? It's almost like a two-piece swing, but it's two pieces of fielding. Yeah. So, you know, that's one of the biggest challenges I have. And it is hard to break, right? It's very tough to teach. It's really hard to teach having good timing and good rhythm with fielding. So, no, I really like that drill that you just mentioned there.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, real quick. I did want to mention, since we have this video up, you know, one thing Tyler and I talked about the other day, we talked a little bit about where we transition. And I love that you got the kid working his glove, and obviously you're just balls in front right now with different hops, but I love that you got him working back into his belly button. One cue that I've used with kids of really all ages is draw a midpoint from your nose down and try and work with your pinky on that line the entire time. When you field it, when you pull it in, and then when you transition, so you limit that movement backwards that we see a lot of kids have, or that movement to their shoulder that we see a lot of kids taught at young levels.
Yeah, no, I like that. And you mentioned something about that earlier, why you like that paddle, because you like working with their hands out in front. And then you describe it in a way where your feet then work towards your hands and you kind of get to that midline or that throwing position. And I like to say that a lot and explain it in the same sense of hitting again, where like we kind of stride away from our hands. You know, like if I can get them working out in front and then work that right foot, left foot, then they're going to pretty much be in a good position with their hands, you know? So that, I like that you said that earlier. And that is one of the main reasons I use a paddle, just because I like working their hands out in front and then working their feet towards their target. But I think I have one more hand drill that I've actually started doing a decent amount. Yeah, this guy. So this is like, I've realized like how important hand exchange is in terms of just playing catch. And like catch play has been something that I don't do a crazy amount with my personal lessons, because if I have a 30-minute lesson and the mom or dad see me just like playing catch with the kid for 10 minutes, I feel like they're going to think like they're not getting their money's worth type of thing. You know, like it almost looks bad from the side. Yeah. But with that being said, I mean, the amount of times we catch and throw the baseball as an infielder is pretty big. So this is a drill that I started doing where all these could be done during the quarantine too. That was kind of one of the main reasons I made the slideshow, is you have like a landmark on the ground and you're just working on hitting that big fatty part of callus part of your hand, and you're working on trying to deflect it down towards the landmark. Then you see the player puts his hand out by his hip, but he doesn't actually catch it unless it hits his hand. He doesn't move his hand. And then you bring your hands together, and like the exchange, it's 8 to 12-year-olds like it because it's just fun, because they're trying to actually hit targets. And then once you start getting to the high school level, like they realize by the time their hands get up together how freaking easy it is and how smooth the exchange is. So this is something that I've been liking doing recently that's been fun for hands.
I like this drill, just, you know, kind of working on that pocket accuracy that we, you know, all the coaches like to use now. You know, and this is a great drill to help you do that, right? You're working your glove all the way around your body, but still finding a way to get your almost, you know, your thumb around it, you know, to the backhand side, and just keeping that pocket facing your target. A lot of kids, you know, even when they're playing catch, you know, their hands are like this rather than being, you know, facing. And it's okay, right? You can have some rhythm to it and open up and flash and whatnot, but you see some guys get a little flashy, even playing catch. So no, I really like this drill.
Yeah. you said it again, and I think I might have said I say in the point, but it adds to the variability again. Like it's like the devil's in the details. And if I didn't tell someone when they go home, like to make sure you throw one middle, forehand, and backhand, like half the high school kids I work with would go and be like, Coach Wright, this drill's cool, but like I just threw 50 reps right at my chest, and it's like that's not really the point, So like adding that variability piece to where I throw one to his middle, one to his forehand, one to his backhand, and I start switching it up. Just adds to that game-like feel. But
yeah. And then Kyle, I had one more question for you. Yeah. We're kind of getting into like variation, but also trying to make it as game-like as possible. Do you ever do any drills with different balls than just baseballs to create maybe different hops in your your knee drills, or even when you start to stand up and isolating?
One thing that I really like, you mentioned before, Szink, is a hack attack, and I'm sure we'll get into it. We have like a mini hack attack that I like a lot, and I like using that with really crappy baseballs. So like once those balls start getting cut up, I don't throw them away. And like when we're hitting off of like live BP, we'll try to put pearls in there because those things will have some nasty cut or like run into some dude's hands. But putting some like jacked up baseballs with the seams ripped up, like I find really like spin differently and work different. And that kind of goes into more game-like feel stuff. So that's the first one that would come to my mind that I think is pretty easy and pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, to answer your question there, one thing I actually started playing around with probably 2 years ago was lacrosse balls. I actually would use lacrosse balls in some of my lessons for really two reasons. One, I had a high school kid that was getting really good at just me, varying up baseball hits with baseballs to him. And I wanted to try something different. So I was like, let's get a bucket of lacrosse balls out. And what I found was the lacrosse balls, the first hop it'll take is pretty natural. Obviously you get some sort of bounce on it, but the second one has a little bit of a different spin. And I thought it was kind of interesting, just kind of keeping guys on their toes. And then, I just enjoyed hitting the lacrosse balls because you can get a lot of velo on them. But yeah, that and tennis balls. I mean, the different types of hops you can get is really awesome, and the balls don't die as quick as a baseball would on any surface. One thing before we moved on, Tyler, like Kyle was saying, he was talking about variables and controlling different variables. I think now is probably a good time to bring up, and I brought this point up the other day when we were on our call. I think when you start to isolate different parts of your body, that's really a time when you need to really dial in your perfection, practicing perfection, as we would call it here. We would refer to it to where we can control all the variables or most of the variables from the plays, the ground ball types we're given, the pace of the practice or the drill, and in some cases, if we have multiple guys, the personnel. And then, like you say, Kyle, controlling the predictability as we start to add different things, fungos, more position guys, hitters, you start to increase, or I should say decrease, the predictability of the play. And that's why when we, like I mentioned, when we start to isolate the hands, for example, and we're on our knees, we want to be really perfect with that glove. Some coaches would probably say 80%. I would say if we're really dialed in and isolating just one part, let's do 100% perfection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll even throw in racquetballs. I used to, when I was at Bucknell, everybody had their own lacrosse ball, tennis ball, racquetball, and baseball, right? So, that was kind of what we'd start off with on, if we were inside for the day, I'd say, hey, find a spot on the wall. You have your four balls, go up, mix it up, challenge yourself, get the different hops. But that's, one thing that I really love doing when we have the chance to go inside, and it just makes it a little bit more fun, something different. I want to go back real quick before we move on about, the mini gloves. I think Szink started to hint on it a little bit. Same with you, Kyle. If you guys don't mind, again, just hinting on why you like the mini glove, and then do you guys ever do anything with like big gloves? I don't know. That might be something new that, throw that around for a little bit. So Kyle, I'll let you start off with that one.
I kind of hope one of you guys use big gloves, because I'd love to hear how you implement that. But yeah, I use small gloves. I use small gloves, kind of like Szink was talking about, to really work on like that hinge of the wrist, just because especially at the youth level, you see a lot of people with that palm up towards the sky. And if I can kind of get them hinging that wrist and working out in front, it's just, there's really no room for error. So I think it's an easy way to kind of show them how to kind of work those hands out in front. I don't use it an absurd amount in terms of actually like catching throws. I'll use it for some like double play footwork, like guys receiving like flips. But it seems to progress more for me with actually fielding. Yeah. We'll do a lot of knee work with it, and then we'll do kind of that right foot, left foot. I'll do a little short fungo toss, and then we'll do kind of our short hops from there. But the main points we kind of hit on is really just hinging that wrist and working out in front and letting my feet work those hands to my midline, opposed to kind of that kind of motion that's left or right into my right hip a little bit too much. You really just can't afford to do that with that glove on.
Sure. Szink?
Yeah, you know what? I've never used big glove, and I'm not – if I was giving a lesson and my lesson asked or had either a 12-inch or an 11 1/4, I would say use that 11 1/4. I think using a big glove, I think it, especially when you are coaching young kids, I think it gives them some room to slack a little bit. Like Kyle was saying, I think the more you can, the more you make players be precise with their hands, the better off you're going to be, especially at the younger levels, and you're trying to teach that skill. And I agree with Kyle. One thing I would add is with any type of glove, and this is another reason why I like the little ones or the paddles, is you're going to have some flexibility with your elbow. You're going to have some freedom with your elbow, and you need that flexibility. When you start adding a larger glove into the equation, the one thing that I've kind of noticed is kids start to get a little stiff, like I said, because they have that room to kind of get, lazy, if you will. So the more flexibility and freedom that they need to have with their arms and hands, to then be precise as they move to and through a ball, I think that just that increases the need for that smaller glove type.
For sure. All right, guys. Moving on to like footwork. What do you guys do drill wise or progression wise to develop infielders' footwork? Kyle, I'll let you start off with that one.
I think I have some stuff on that PowerPoint. So let's see if this works again. So my big thing that I've started to do, and it was actually the title of this, is like constraints and landmarks. And I've realized with my footwork, I can really constrain. Oh, that's not the one I want. Let's see here. So this is like my double play footwork, right? And I've started using, I know people using PVC pipes like crazy with hitting right now, but I've started using PVC pipes a lot in my infield drills, and just to kind of constrain players and make them work in certain directions. And after doing a bunch of reps, I think they kind of just realize like, oh, this feels clean. This feels way quicker than I'm like used to doing. And so like in this instance, for a double play feed, the amount of kids that I see catch the ball and step back like towards right center field as a second baseman, like it's probably 9 out of 10. Like the amount of quote unquote like negative movement, again, back to like a hitting kind of terminology, but like the amount of negative movement or energy that they don't have going towards first base is pretty crazy. So I've started working by putting a PVC pipe literally behind their feet, and they kind of work through this tunnel. So this is one of just the, one of the constraints I use. I think the next one, same kind of thing. I have another PVC pipe, and we're working on kind of our direction towards second base on turning a double play. And I'm not even really telling the kid anything besides, hey, you're going to field the ball and you're going to work on a double play ball, throwing the ball to second base. And like they take it, they're smart, they're all athletic. It takes care of themselves. You know, like you're going to field the ball out in front. You're not going to hit the PVC pipe. And then you're going to shuffle in the direction that the PVC pipe's pointing, you know? So just another good landmark tool and something easy that I think coaches and players can use to start progressing their footwork. Cones. I use a lot of cones in a lot of my drills. And the same thing, when I was telling these kids during our session, we were working on fielding out in front, breaking to a tight V, and doing our two-step footwork, which you can see this kid's doing. And I didn't even really emphasize anything in terms of the footwork that was going on before that. I said, hey, you're going to shuffle your feet around the circle. Like I told him what you're going to do, but like they don't even really realize how quick their feet are working or what they're trying to do if you have these landmarks and constraints out there, I feel like half the time. So I think I have one more footwork drill. I know I'm going kind of quick and doing a lot of them. So I was doing slow rollers. This is the same kid that I was doing the small drills with. And I literally made a tunnel that he had to work down. So then my feeds, middle, forehand, and backhand, made him work into those different types of slow rollers. Again, this kid's 8 years old. And I mean, like, he looks pretty freaking smooth for an 8-year-old on his slow rollers, you know? And again, if I didn't have that tunnel there and I threw him a middle, forehand, and backhand, I guarantee you he would have taken his feet and made every single one that two-handed one, because he liked working with two hands, you know? So like kind of forcing them sometimes into different lanes is like, again, it's a constraint that I think ends up benefiting them in the long run, because he would do that one every single time if he could choose. But I forced him into that forehand kind of funnel and this backhand kind of thumb down to thumb up. But
Kyle, I like this, you know, even at an older level, right?
Yeah.
On balls that are almost do or dies, some of the non-athletic guys will still try to get around it to get some momentum on their throw towards first.
Yeah.
So I really like this for any level, to be able to, hey, you just got to go get it, and you just got to trust that your feet are going to work together, and you're going to be able to transfer and get it out without needing that momentum to throw towards first. So I really like this drill.
Yeah, no. Again, it adds to the variability piece. You know, like there's plenty of different types of lanes you can feel the slow roller in, and I feel like a lot of kids try to get the same exact one every single time. And it's something you see a lot at the next level with MLB guys. The amount of times they feel that slow roller backhand and kind of take that thumb down to thumb up. You just don't see that as much in the college level, because I feel like people take that big J hook around it.
Yep.
You know?
I think a lot of that comes, Kyle, with what guys are comfortable doing. I know, like, you don't see that backhand at the younger levels because kids are so scared or so unfamiliar with the backhand. I think that's why you see kids go kind of straight after it and try to do the two-hand lane with it, is because that's what they're taught. That's the majority of what they're taught.
Yeah, no. Like I said, that was a lot of stuff, but I've just started to realize with like my footwork, if I can kind of have constraints and certain landmarks that, like, even like putting a bucket, and I know Kai Correa's talked about this or at least tweeted about it, when we're doing like our 2-step and 4-step, having an empty bucket that they kind of have to work towards. It's like a very easy landmark that like forces people into like actually working towards their target. And I think it's worked really well with the players that I've worked with.
Yeah. Go ahead, Szink. What about you, man?
Yeah, so I'm going to break this up into pre-field footwork pattern and post-field. Both ideas, we want to create some sort of adjustability, but also some sort of some sort of like lanes or guidelines that guys work into. So real quick, pre-field, anything that gets your feet moving, I really like. One thing that I kind of started playing around with when I was back at Bo Jackson's was having guys start in ladders and work either in with the ladder, left or right, and just get their feet moving. One thing, like Kyle was saying, when a guy's moving in, you see so many young kids start to get what I call the penguin waddle. It kind of slows them down, kind of heavy feet type movements. With the ladders, what I would start to do is, if just as an example, if we're moving in on a ball, or a ball maybe that's slower hit, I'd have a guy kind of chop their feet through the ladder, and then once they get through it, then they have to make a decision on, do they keep the choppy steps? Do they have to take bigger steps? It's just something, like I said, to get their feet moving. I really liked it from both I really like the ladders from both a visual standpoint and getting guys in and out in drills too, for coaches looking to speed up practice a little bit. From a left-right standpoint, I would actually vary what was their first foot in the ladder. What was their, are they going 1 foot in each box? Are they going 2 feet in each box? And then once they get through it, obviously you see so many guys wanting to stop their body, young kids especially, obviously, wanting to stop their body once they get through it. Well, you get through it. What I would do is, once they get about 2 boxes from the end, I'm rolling the ball, and they have to then make a continuous move through the ladder and after to try and field the ball. Some guys are diving, some guys are getting there pretty easy. And then also, like Kyle was saying, what I've seen before and what I've done before, and I really like, is creating lanes for backhand, forehand, giving different angles from a slower hit or a roll, just to get guys used to moving. So we can either use the old triangle, the angle drills, the rounded cones. I've done the buckets before. I would say from a middle infielder standpoint, those are great. From a corner infield standpoint, a couple of things I've done from a pre-field idea is to give guys kind of a line to work on. So they're getting used to just going left and right, versus trying to do too much. I know that's one of the things that when I was at Bo's, we saw a lot of guys try to just have too much movement in the corners, and we would just start preaching, stay low and try and work horizontally on balls hit hard at you. We saw guys become a little bit more fierce, a little bit less fearless, or more fearless, I should say, and attacking balls that way.
Zink, real quick,
yeah.
Is there a drill that you like to do with, working back, right? You get one of those high hops or the kind of in-betweeners, and the infielder has to create space by working back. Is there a drill that you like to do for that?
Yeah, the depth, I call it the depth drills. Obviously you see that a lot in the corners. It's really just a shuffle of the feet. If you got a ball to your right, you just put your left foot where your right foot is, and then use your right foot to create the depth that you need. You can do it with different variations. You can do it with a coach throwing it to you, a partner throwing it to you, off a fungo or off a hack attack. Obviously, if you want to try and be really precise, you use the throw or the hack attack. But yeah, those are the ones I like. And going back to the different ball types, I think it becomes easier to create those hops, or even accentuate hops, when you're using balls like racket balls and lacrosse balls or tennis balls, when you want to get those bigger hops and try and get guys moving more. If you're gonna try and get guys staying low, maybe you start adding in baseballs or balls that aren't gonna bounce as high.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you said that, Tyler. And like the amount of kids I see in high school still that play corner infield and don't realize that they're allowed to work backwards,
mm-hmm.
like, because I coach showcase baseball as well, and I feel like half the time it's because when they're playing third base, they were shortstops, like they were shortstops their whole life, and they're just so used to working forward that like they are literally scared, and or at least they've never even done it before, working backwards. And once they realize they have the freedom to do that, it opens up so much in terms of their footwork patterns, and like they become so much more fluid, connected. Everything just seems to work a lot better. And you show them one video of Arenado or somebody doing it, and they're like, oh, they do work backwards a lot at third base. You know?
Yeah. And that was one thing, when I started getting into coaching was, I was a middle infielder. So, heck, going backwards for me, like, rarely ever happened, right? So when I got into coaching, I even, did the old coaching cues of attack the baseball, and when I got into lessons and I'd say attack the baseball, you see kids just beeline straight, straight for the ball. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, attacking the baseball. Well, that's where I had to, kind of learn a little bit to kind of use the right words and be efficient with your movements. And attacking the baseball doesn't necessarily mean moving forward. It can mean moving in any direction, right? Even backwards. So no, that's kind of why I brought that up. It was just something funny that I thought of, one of the first lessons I gave, and I'd say attack the baseball. The kid just running straight in on the ball, and the ball was hit pretty hard at him. Like, what are you doing? So moving on, is there any drills outside of, footwork or glove work that you think is beneficial for infielders to do? And it could be hand-eye coordination. It could be vision stuff. It could be tag plays, cuts and relays, something that you think is going to really, improve an infielder's game. Szink, I'll let you start off with that.
Yeah, actually, one thing I was just going to mention too, from a post-field standpoint, I think anytime we can practice our throws, our angles with our throws, I think that's very beneficial. And then anytime we can feel our lower half, whether it's on a double play turn, on a throwing pattern, as we're moving towards first or second base or wherever we're throwing the ball to, maybe adding a medicine ball or something that's gonna, or I've used ankle weights before, something that's gonna make us feel our lower half a little bit more and get us a little bit more kind of understanding how we're moving. From you just mentioned from tags, tag plays. I think that's one of the things we don't practice enough, or that doesn't get practiced enough. I love doing, and I got really good at this actually, was hitting fungos for guys to catch and tag, and then adding in some sort of something coming at the guy, whether it's a medicine ball, baseballs, whatever, giving guys some sort of unpredictability with that fungo. Is it going to be a line? Doing it, if we're doing it at second base, what I started doing was going from the pitcher's mound, trying to give guys, like I said, variability, hitting a line at them to where they just catch and tag down, trying to give them some sort of short hop, all those different types of feeds. And then if we want to try and get really precise, obviously add in that hack attack if we want to add some sort of velocity, or just get really precise on where the ball's hitting every time. From a receiving standpoint, obviously this comes into play more so at first base than anything. Same idea, adding in the fungo, adding in the predictability of where the ball's going, progressing to a hack attack. I've even done just kind of get my body moving as a guy and just throwing with different arm angles to the first baseman, getting him seeing different, if it's just me and him, getting him seeing different arm angles and how the ball moves. From the fielders or from the receiver standpoint, varying their starting position, varying their bag position. Maybe I've seen where Kai, for example, does like the 3-bag drill, to where they have to move to the different bags, and then you just have a hack attack going in one spot. This will be the last thing I mention, and I'll let Kyle talk here. I know we're running out of time a little bit, but from a communication standpoint, this is another thing I think doesn't get hit on very much is communication on ground balls, especially in the 6-hole. We always talk about the third baseman trying to be aggressive, but if it's a play where we just have a really stagnant third baseman that's not moving very much, we know that shortstop's going to be able to make that play. Just letting that shortstop communicate with his third baseman and say, hey, I got this one, or vice versa. Maybe the third baseman has a beat on it, and we got an aggressive shortstop, and just that third baseman letting them know. And then same thing over on the other side of the infield, the first baseman being aggressive and making sure we communicate with the other infielders on who's got the bag. And same thing on double plays, and just being communicating as much as we can, being overly communicative. That's probably what I got.
Yeah. Real quick before Kyle goes, you mentioned, Kai's famous drill of having the multiple bases, right? I love that drill, because it's efficient, right? You can practice so many different plays in a matter of 5 seconds, right? And you can mix in different double play feeds, mix in different tag plays like you mentioned, and heck, I think even one of them he does, cuts and relays for another one. So I really like how efficient it is, and it's great if you get stuck inside, or if you get stuck under something where it's raining. I know at Stetson we have a kind of an overhang for cages, which we're not covered, but if it's raining, we can still, there's no excuses not to get some work in, right? Kyle, go ahead, man.
Yeah, so I have 2 that are like baseball, and then 2 a little funky. So stay with me. But the first one was tag plays from throwdowns from the catcher, just like Szink was talking about. And I'm still working on my fungo abilities. I was used to hitting missiles in the gap last year. So like my post playing days, like I'm really trying to work on that. So I might need some tips. So I definitely utilize the hack attack, and I just have that thing on a hinge, and I'm just shooting that thing around at different spots.
Sure.
And having them really work on getting to the front of the bag. The amount of kids I work with, even at the high school level still, that like to go, and the immediate thing they do is straddle that bag, and they have nowhere to work and no freedom, kind of getting them and changing their mindset to getting that front corner and then progressing backwards on perfect throws is something that isn't really easy for them to do. And as that progression kind of works, they start realizing kind of the benefit of that. So that's the first outside just normal fielding. Number 2 was having them just take throwing a little bit more serious. And I touched on it beforehand, but I think the difference between a lot of like just average and really good high school programs around me, at least, is a lot of them take throwing really serious. And I don't know if you'd go to a college program or across the country. Tyler, you can speak on this more, but I assume you guys have some sort of like planned out throwing progression, and the amount of kids that I see that just go out and throw with not working on any sort of exchange of the catch, without taking it serious in terms of what they're doing with their 2-step or 4-step, or if they're trying to throw just at the person, or they're trying to hit the left shoulder. I think there's a lot that can go into just throwing a little bit better, and that helps develop them.
Kyle, real quick, I think that's awesome. When I first got into coaching, I just started reaching out to some of the better fielding teams in the country, and one of the coaches actually was joking around. He's like, I don't know why we call it baseball. We should call it play catch. And he was like, if anything, come up with a really good throwing and catching program. A lot of people say go out there and throw, get your arms loose, but it's really it's everything, right? It's a throwing and catch routine. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you guys might even know this. I'd love to know the data on college baseball and the amount of errors that are throwing based off of fielding. I don't know if you guys know that, but I would assume it's more throwing.
Yeah, from tracking our team this year, we had more throwing than really catching errors. And for whatever reason, I think, and I even broke it down where I had throwing, catching, and fielding, right? Because we had a couple errors where guys would just drop it out of their glove from a throwing ball, and I'm like, what are you doing, right? And it just goes back to, hey, we got to have a better throw and catch routine.
Drinking a little extra whiskey.
But yeah, it was by far more throwing than anything.
Yeah, makes sense. The last two are, like I said, were kind of funkier, but I think I found it. I just pulled it up online. I'll see if I can share it. This one's kind of vision work, and I started doing this my last year playing. It's called Neuro Tracker. I'm sure there's other stuff like this, but it's pretty much just a video game that you get with 3D goggles, but it works on, it's like old school video game. It's like balls moving around the screen, and like, I just think vision is something that doesn't get hit on in our world, especially at the youth and high school level enough. And the amount of kids that I've, more on a hitting standpoint, that have been like, Coach, I went and saw a sports vision specialist. Like, I'm terrible at this. Like, I started doing X, and like, I can see the ball better now. It's like, wow, like, it's crazy how important our eyes are. And I think both Szink and Tyler talked about, like, with your small drills, just like looking the ball in and like how important our vision is. So that's something that is a pretty cool tool that I started using myself. And I think it's still up and running. Like I said, I found the website right beforehand. So then this was the other just like vision thing. I haven't started using these yet. I haven't bought one. I don't know if you guys have or see anybody that use them, but it's kind of that like those sticks or like those colored balls that you just kind of catch when you throw up in the air. I don't know if it's worth the $35-$40. You might be able to make it yourself. I don't know. Clearly I'm not associated with any of these. But
I think I remember Kai creating one with different color wiffle balls or something.
I think you could do that pretty easily for $4.99, you know, like, but with that being said, I think the main point is the vision's pretty key. And then the last one, this guy, I started watching him a lot in the like since my playing days have been done, and I wish I would have done more. His name's Ian Markar. He does a kin stretch, and it's pretty much just mobility, and like he's got a bunch of free stuff, and that's why I liked watching him, you know, like so it's like a yoga class, but more in terms of just joint mobility and range of movement. And in the infield, I guess I can't stress enough how like important being able to like externally rotate our hips and actually hip hinge and shoot our butt back. And half the time it's like I'm trying to tell these kids to get into these positions. And I interned as a strength and conditioning coach, and I was a personal trainer for a while throughout the summers. And I just started to realize just how tight and how poor mobility people have. And that's just a really good tool that I wish I would have had back when I was in high school, because you do one 30-minute free class that was on there, and you'll be lit up. And you'll wake up the next day and feel pretty good. So I think the vision and mobility are two things that could really help a lot of kids.
Sure.
I agree. Tyler, real quick. No, I agree with that vision. I think I mentioned it last week or maybe the week before. The earlier we can read that ball off the bat, I think the better we're going to be, and the better or quicker movements we're going to have to the baseball.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate you taking your time out on a Thursday night. I learned a lot from both of you. Thank you guys again for being on here. I'll get it posted on YouTube and then Twitter. So go on there and retweet it so we can get some views. All right?
Sounds
You
good.
got it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tyler.